Thanks for being with us here on Morning Live. Now, the South African Post Office has warned that it will run out of money by next month, putting it at risk of liquidation. Now, the business rescue practitioners gave a warning in a presentation to the Portfolio Committee on Communications on Tuesday. And despite receiving 2.4 billion rand funding allocation from National Treasury in 2023, the South African Post Office says that it still needs 3.8 billion rand bailout from government to meet its business rescue plans and needs to keep operating. Now, SAPO was placed under business rescue in July last year. For more on this matter, we joined virtually now by Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Mondli Gungubele. Deputy Minister, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Good morning to your viewership. Thanks for the opportunity.
It's a very dire situation playing out with the South African Post Office, but one that's been a long time in the making, Deputy Minister. So the business rescue practitioners now saying that the Post Office will need another 3.8 billion rand to fully implement the business rescue plan. Has a formal application for that funding already been submitted?
Thank you, Sakina. Thank you. Let me just take South Africans, remind South Africans about something. That SAPO had a possibility of either being liquidated or rescued. Liquidation would have meant disappearance of that institution and all its services and a dismissal or end of jobs for no less than 11,000 workers. And government made a choice of applying to court for the rescue option. And for that option, Sakina, to be granted, 3 or 4 issues had to happen. 1, we had to demonstrate how we're going to service creditors. 2, whether there's a strategy for the future of the post. 3, whether we're going to be able to actually continue to run the services. Lastly, whether that rescue will be funded. In other words, those are the 4 issues. And when all those were put before court and cost tested them and cost was satisfied, it granted the order. That's why now it's on rescue. So government committed to fund that rescue for no less than 3.8 billion. Already at that time, Sakina, 2.4 billion had been allocated, not in anticipation of liquidation. I'm not sure if I make this point. Before there was liquidation incident, already SAPO had put before government the strategy of the post of tomorrow. And that strategy was going to be funded by 2.4 billion, and government had approved that. So in other words, both these were allocated towards SAPO for rescue. The reason the BRP have been able to actually run the post office now is because of the 2.4 billion. 3.8 billion is what is still being discussed with Treasury, which the government made an undertaking to do. I'm not sure if that clarifies anything.
It does, but I do have a few more questions around that, Deputy Minister. So when the South African Post Office was placed under business rescue in July last year, you had the rescue practitioners, Ruplal and Damons, who were appointed to formulate a plan. And speaking to that 2 odd billion rand, that rescue plan was adopted in December last year. So what has gone wrong with that plan, or right for that matter? Because now they're talking about more money. So what happened with that plan? What's the assessment?
No, maybe let's clarify. Thank you, Sakina, at this point. There is no more money. I'm saying over and above the 2.4 billion government had allocated to SAPO, the analysis of what was going to be required to rescue SAPO was an addition of 3.8 billion, which cabinet made an undertaking to fund. I'm not sure if I'm clarifying.
You are.
Now, so it's not an additional money. That's the point. Maybe let me clarify what SAPO, what PRPs are trying to do. PRPs are trying to say If those undertakings are not met as agreed, that is what is going to happen end of October. I'm not sure if it clarifies it now.
It certainly does, which then brings me back to the initial question about whether the formal application has been made, which you've answered, but also does government then have the money for that 3.8 billion which is now required?
Listen, when we make an undertaking as government, like it was done by cabinet, it's a commitment to meet that undertaking. So where I'm sitting, the government made a decision to meet that undertaking. Government has to meet that undertaking. But however, we have also discussed, Sakina, with the BRPs that one of the things we expect them to do is that when government, actually this is what was said by the Minister of Finance, that when government finally funds that, allocate that 3.8 billion, in front of the minister, there must be a business plan which is of such a nature that when that money is allocated, SAPO will be less dependent on fiscals than it was before.
And brings me to the next point then, Deputy Minister, in terms of what this will mean for those 11,000 workers of the South African Post Office, because the practitioners have also indicated that government should perhaps proactively and reactively consider mutually beneficial partnerships for the post office. So what does that mean in terms of that consideration for private partnership for the post office?
Maybe another point, Sakina, is that you remember 4,700 workers have been retrenched. And they are being paid in trenches as we speak. Maybe it's also important to report to South Africans that there's a lot of positive work that BRPs have done. For instance, BRPs, when they took over, the net asset value would have been 7.9 billion on the negative. Now it's 840 million on the positive. The creditors would have been owed no less than 8.7 billion. As we speak now, they are being owed 440 million. That's a huge turnaround by what to call by BRPs. Already, they have been able to lease no less than 422 vehicles so that mail can be moved between processing centers so that there can be transportation and delivery to what to call to relevant homes. And lastly, to make sure that as we speak, there is also, I'm said homes, and at the same time between centers, and at the same time, the normal service is carried. Or no, what I wanted to say actually is that they have put a universal post union of post office, the post office, the international committee that actually deals with UPU obligations. What are UPU obligations? Is that post office has got an obligation to render universal services. They have also put that committee to make sure that those services are being what we call met. And significantly, a lot of work is done in that regard. There's a lot of positive work that they have done up to this point, Sakina.
Deputy Minister, again, with regard to the search potentially, if this is the way government chooses to go for a private partner, do you believe that there is room, as things stand right now, for a more aggressive and perhaps more innovative approach to improve the fortunes of the post office? Because there was also a call for the communications minister to actually renew that SAPO exclusive license for the distribution of parcels weighing less than 1 kilogram.
My understanding, Sakina, that license has not been taken away except that it is being contested by some other parties. Having said that, Government has actually told BRPs that we are open to partnership as long as the government doesn't lose ownership. I'm not sure if I make that point. So all those partnership engagements, as we speak now, the BRPs are engaging in them. For instance, is Takealot having an appetite to use a huge infrastructure network of SAPO, which is all over the country? And how much money are they going to give so that SAPO can continue to give the universal service obligation, to execute the universal service obligations? You know, partnership discussions are there. A number of parties have shown interest, but as we do that, the ownership of SAPO must never be lost by the state, because it's only the state, in our view, that can actually ensure a sustainable undertaking with regard to servicing universal service obligation.
So to that point, the other question would then be, is government then prepared to make sure that you have the right people running an entity such as the South African Post Office? Because an entity, private entities are run well because of the unique oversight mechanisms that they have, the conditions that are put in place to make sure that targets are met, et cetera, et cetera. So the thing with entities like the Post Office and all other state-owned entities is that they can do well. And I would love to think that they can perhaps even be self-sufficient if they are run properly, given, as you say, the network that they have, which some of these private entities simply don't. So again, is government at this point committed to making sure that it actually appoints the right people to take the entity forward?
I think that commitment is the only sensible thing, Sakina. Let me say, you know IDC, you know Sastria, you know SARS, you know even around 2002 where ESCOM was, those were highly rated institutions globally, being state-owned entities because they were run by professional people, by competent people. Having these institutions being run by competent people is the only way to go. Look at what ESCOM has done in a short space of time when competent people are deployed. The point I'm trying to make is that a government that takes its people serious will only have to move in that direction which the government is moving in. So that commitment is the only commitment as far as I'm concerned. Even it includes SAPO. In SAPO, a lot of weaknesses that were discovered by BRPs. To be honest with you, had it been run by competent people, a lot of those things could not have been actually be found.
And we are running out of time, but I quickly want to touch on this, Deputy Minister. What is the latest about that forensic probe into a criminal syndicate that's allegedly stole over 100 million rand in post-bank grants?
Thank you, Sakina. This report, which was given to the Portfolio Committee a few days ago, it's not a report that came out this year. It came out last year. A lot of interventions. I had mischief. Some people tweeting that when they are in government. I know, I can't attribute this to our minister because we have not been working that way. Some, when they are in government, there's accountability. That forensic and that cash theft, Sakina, we've got case numbers last year, the first half of last year. There are people already who have been convicted. Some had their property attached and so on. So in other words, it was updating the 7th Administration Portfolio Committee more about the progress than telling them what has happened, than actually informing them about the new development. It's an old development of last year. We made interventions. We even changed we even tried to make sure that we put an administrator over Post Bank. But as I'm sitting here, those things were with Hawk as early as the first half of 2023.
So that is where that one is. Again, for people watching, as you said, Minister, if you look at the vast network, Deputy Minister, of the South African Post Office and the reliance that many South Africans, especially in rural and far-flung areas, have on the South African Post Office, what's the assurance, the message that you could give to them this morning about the South African Post Office going forward?
Sakina, I can say with certainty that post office is stabilizing. As I've already said, they have leased no less than 422 cars to move mail between centers. International backlog has been actually cleared. A number of backlogs have been reduced. We expect that delivery to improve. Let me say this, when this rescue and liquidation came, it also put the institution in a paralytic mode, where a number of people who were supposed to do work, even those who were using their cars to actually deliver, they came to a standstill because they were not certain about where the post office is going. There's a huge improvement now, but it will take time before we go back to what we believe is the best service level. But we are on course towards that as I speak to you now.
Deputy Minister, thanks so much for your time. That was Mondli Gungubele, the Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, speaking about the South African Post Office and, of course, what the injection of 3.8 billion will do for the Post Office and, of course, the future of where the department would like to see this entity go.